Testing 1 to 3. 3 to 1 testing. Testing 1 to 3. 3 to 1 testing. Can you hear me? Hello.
morning, good morning. I want to thank everybody who is, come on in. We've got lots of room, but you don't have to sit up front if you don't want to. That's just fine. I'm Terry Braden with Southern University System Foundation, Director of Programs. So I am the person that you can call to give us your feedback, to make suggestions on what you would like to see here presented at the Valdry Center for Philanthropy on this campus of Southern University and A&M College, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'd be remiss if I don't say hello to those of you who are viewing us live with YouTube or our Facebook. But currently, I'd like to just tell a few of you all just a little bit about the Valdry Center who may be here for the first time. Again, thank you for coming. The Valdry Center for Philanthropy is an academically based research center focused on philanthropic studies and nonprofit management. VCP seeks to educate the socially conscious student, volunteer, and practitioner in the emerging field of philanthropy studies through exploring, the economic, historical, and philosophical rationales for voluntary action in the local, national, and international arenas. We want to thank Leon, Warren, and Virginia Valdry for their vision to see such a fantastic center here on the campus of Southern University. They are our 1955, 57, 59 graduates, and they are still here with us this day. I would like to present to you all, without any further ado, our speaker for today. We have Mr. Julius Bedford. He's the managing director of Bernhard Capital Partners here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's involved in all areas of the firm's infrastructure, investment activities. Prior to joining VCP, Julius served as the associate at Rockland Capital, LLC in Houston, Texas. While at Rockland, Julius's responsibilities included the evaluation and analysis of investment transactions in the power sector. In addition, Julius worked as an analyst with Barclays in their power and utilities investment banking group. Julius currently lives here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with his wife and 2 children, and he serves on boards of the National Water Infrastructure and Ascension-based water and waste utility company, and the Junior Achievement of Greater Baton Rouge. He's a graduate of Dartmouth College with a BA in economics. Please help me welcome Julius.
All right. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Julius Bedford, as Terry mentioned in a very generous introduction. I'm a managing director at Bernhard Capital Partners. Look, I'm really excited to be here speaking with you all this morning. When I got the opportunity, the invitation to speak as a part of this series, I began learning more and more about the Valdry Center, and I couldn't have more admiration for what's occurring here, helping to build future leaders in the nonprofit and philanthropic sectors is a really admirable goal and initiative here. So I'm happy to play my small role in it. But like I said, I read more and more, got more impressed, and more appreciative of everything that's happening here. But eventually, the obvious question kind of arose for me, which is, where the heck do I fit in a discussion series about the nonprofit sector when I've spent basically entirely of my career firmly entrenched in for-profit endeavors? Just to reiterate some of what Terry already said, I started my career as an investment banker, working in New York for a firm called Barclays, helping to advise large publicly traded utility companies to access capital or advising them on mergers and acquisitions. I was helping to advise companies on how to make profit. Then transitioned to Rockland Capital, which is a power generation focused infrastructure firm where on behalf of our investors, we were again making investments focused on generating profit for them. And today, I help lead our infrastructure platform at Bernhard Capital Partners as a managing director. I've been with the team there almost 9 years now. And you could probably say it with me this time. We're focused on making investments that generate profit for our investors. So again, not the most intuitive connection to the audience today, but I took a step back and thought a little bit more. And there's another, thankfully, gratefully for me, there's another through line in my professional experience beyond just the making of profit. And if you were paying attention a little bit in some of those stops, you'll notice that, consistently, I've always been there playing my role, supporting the firms and the management teams that are in charge, that have stewardship over the most critical of assets that support our communities. I'm talking about utilities. I'm talking about the folks who are responsible for generating and transporting the electrons that are turning on the lights in this building right now, that are energizing this microphone. I'm talking about the folks who are responsible for transporting responsibly the molecules that heat our food, that warm our homes, the folks who make sure the water's running. I'm going to be especially grateful for that today, I know. And just as importantly, folks responsible for making sure our toilets flush when we need them to. I think we can all agree those are essential services. They're really the backbone of any successful, thriving community. And, while my professional life has been around the for-profit sector, like Terry mentioned, I serve and help support some nonprofit organizations locally. My wife actually works as an executive at a national education nonprofit. So I've got all the admiration in the world for that sector. It's just not been a part of my professional story. But I think if I can describe a little bit beyond the why I do what I do in terms of making profit, there's a lot for this audience that can be discussed in the how we make that profit and how it really goes straight to generating philanthropic opportunities. So if you're a leader of a nonprofit locally, I hope you get something out of this session today that's going to, generate some ideas for how you can seek out partnership with your local utilities. So I'll pause there. And before I continue, I just want to ask the question to a few folks in the audience here. What are you hoping to get out of this session? I'd like some guidance on where I should emphasize things. Looking for hands.
There is a question from YouTube. Specifically, it's from Naisha Robinson. Where and at what level do you see community partnerships being the most impactful in infrastructure investment amid our current reality of climate change adaptation and planned retreats?
Oh, I love that question. That's something we're definitely going to touch on a little bit later. There are all kinds of subjects around which you can find alignment with your local utility. One of the things I definitely want to touch on in this session, and I'll make sure I give special emphasis on it when we get there, is how what you're focused on, and there are a lot of organizations focused on, climate response and how we're becoming more resilient for a changing climate, what our environmental responsibilities are as a utility around responding to climate change. And that's somewhere where, once again, our profit incentive, I believe, is directly aligned with the incentives and the goals of many nonprofits focused on that. So thank you for that question. Bear with me a little bit. We're definitely going to spend some time on it a little bit later. Anyone else looking for anything particular out of this session as we move along? If not, I'll take one more sip of water and jump right into it. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of an introduction to VCP and my role there, just to give you a better feel for contextually where we exist in our community, where we guide our investments to making, where we guide our investors to where we're going to make investments around community growth. From there, I'm going to launch right into what we're doing with regulated utilities specifically, and how we've thought about our investments there and how we think about our role in the community and where we see alignment in the growth there. So bear with me just the next couple slides on BCP and my role specifically, and then we'll jump right into how that generates opportunities for philanthropy. So as I mentioned, BCP, we are a middle market infrastructure services and asset focused investment firm, private equity investment firm located here in Baton Rouge. And what we try to do is we leverage our operational experience and our insights to try to make investments in critical infrastructure that generate positive returns to our investors. So I think this graphic, again, is really helpful to where we exist. And I'll just highlight a few of the companies here. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see National Water Infrastructure. That's a company upon a board that I serve on. And National Water Infrastructure is our Ascension Parish-based wastewater and water utility. It serves roughly 25,000 customers in Louisiana. We're currently undergoing a really exciting project there to regionalize all of the wastewater collection and treatment infrastructure in Ascension Parish. And we're going to be going back to environmental improvements there. We're actually going to be removing upwards of 3 million gallons per day of treated sewer from local waterways and bayous in Ascension, and redirecting it to be treated by the Mississippi River, and then dispose of the treated effluent there in that larger water body. Again, that's a really good example of a project that has positive environmental outcomes, but it's also a really great business proposition investment for our investors. So proud to be a part of NWI. I'll also highlight on the screen here, in the bottom right-hand corner, a logo that's hopefully familiar to a lot of the folks in Baton Rouge and New Orleans today, Delta Utilities. So Delta Utilities is our newest platform within our infrastructure investment portfolio. It's our gas distribution utility platform that serves roughly 600,000 customers in Louisiana and Mississippi, employs roughly 800 folks. We actually, when we acquired this business from acquisitions with CenterPoint and Entergy, which I'll discuss on the next slide, we actually added 200 additional jobs. So we see that as a really positive economic development impact for the communities we're serving. We couldn't be more excited to be growing in our investment in Delta Utilities. I'll touch on a couple more just to keep on the utility theme here. United Utility and TechServe, you'll see those are both companies that sit in our services side of the house. They both, in their own ways, provide professional services, engineering, some craft labor support, project management support for regulated utilities. So, at BCP, we are all over the community trying to make investments in critical assets, providing essential services, and we have, especially where I sit today, a particular focus on regulated utilities. So, as I mentioned, the last 3 or so years, I've been eating, sleeping, breathing regulated utilities. We have, in addition to our water and wastewater utilities, made a significant step into gas distribution utilities. In October 2023, we signed an agreement with Entergy to acquire their New Orleans and Baton Rouge gas distribution utilities. That's a transaction that closed earlier this June. In February 2024, we signed a similar agreement with CenterPoint Energy to acquire their Louisiana and Mississippi gas utilities in a deal that closed earlier this year in March. And finally, in August 2024, we signed an agreement with Emera, which is a large utility holding company, to acquire a New Mexico gas company from them. We're looking forward to that transaction closing early next year. So throughout all of this, we've understood that we're not just making investments in assets and management teams. We're also investing in the communities that these utilities serve, and we're taking on a pretty massive responsibility to reliably deliver essential services to each and every one of our customers there. So I'm going to speak generally today about utilities and how they generate philanthropic opportunities and how you can partner with them as a nonprofit. But I just want you to understand that it's with some very recent experience about how we're going to invest in these things and make good outcomes for our investors. and how important it is for us to consider our community impact while we do that. So it's been top of mind for me, and hopefully I'm able to impart something, a little bit of something I've been focusing on. So here's today's thesis statement, right? Investments in critical infrastructure are most successful when they support and strengthen the communities they serve. And that this alignment between investment and public good can generate meaningful philanthropic opportunities. That's what I want everyone listening today and in person to take away from this session, right? It's pretty intuitive, right? Take a piece of infrastructure, a toll road or a bridge doesn't have any value if no one wants to get to where it's leading, right? But I think that regulate utilities are a pretty interesting type of business where this is especially embedded within the business model itself, right? We understand that community growth is directly related to our bottom line. And I'm gonna lay this out across 3 central questions in today's session. You know, first, why does this alignment exist? I want you to understand a little bit at a high level what the business model is to regulate utilities and why it necessitates that our community impact is a positive one if we want to have positive earnings growth. That alignment exists for a reason, and we're going to answer that question here today. And I want you to understand that our involvement in the community it's not discretionary, right? It's directly to our bottom line, so this is something we have to engage on if we want to be successful. Next, I want you to understand where this alignment is strongest. How can you as a community leader, how can you as a nonprofit, best engage and maximize the amount of resources that could be available to you? Where do companies want to be deploying their charitable contributions to a community? And lastly, once we track why the alignment exists and where you can make the most of it, where it's strongest, I want you to understand how you access these resources, right? More to the point, how do utilities want to deploy these resources? What vehicles do they have at their fingertips that you need to know about so you know how to ask for the help that you need? So these 3 questions, we're going to step through the presentation. Hopefully this can be as interactive as you'd like it to be. But I want to make sure that we're always coming back to these 3 questions and proving out the thesis that this alignment exists between investors and the community. And it can create some really good outcomes. So first, why does it exist? I think you understand why the alignment exists. We have to understand how investors and utilities make money. And the central thing to understand with how we make money is that regulate utilities are monopolies, right? Basically, there is a lack of competition for the services that they provide. Even more than just being a monopoly, they are natural monopolies, right? What do I mean by that? I mean, if we make an investment to run some pipe from our water treatment facility to your community to serve 100 people, right? That 101st person that moves in that community, conceivably, they could say, well, look, I want some competition. I want someone else to offer me, what it's going to take, what it's going to cost for them to offer me drinking water. But that competitor would then have to think about, well, am I going to replicate an entire new pipeline to go parallel to the existing pipeline, serve that one customer? There's no way they could even think about competing with the price we could offer with just one incremental customer to our 100 existing customers, right? That's where a monopoly becomes an existing monopoly. And because of that, there need to be safeguards in place to protect consumers from, monopolistic power, right? That's why these are highly, highly regulated companies. And, because of that, regulators are in place, typically at the state level, to oversee our performance and to approve and set the rates that we charge customers. So regulation is necessary here. It's what makes the business a little different. So what do regulators look at? How do they go about setting rates? Well, rates are set high level to deliver a fair rate of return to utility investors, right? So, there's a lot of work and machinations, negotiations that go into determining what's fair. But eventually there's a long drawn out process that makes that determination and relates the regulators' call at the end of the day. And, as an investor, I'm getting that regulated approved rate of return on something that we call rate base. Rate base is essentially the cumulative investment that we've made in all the assets that go towards serving customers. So the wires, the poles, the pipes that deliver the molecules, the water, the electrons, all that investment, all that maintenance of it, all that capital investment is defined as rate base, essentially. So what do you take away from this? My earnings are simply a product of my rate base and my rate of return as determined by the regulators. It's a little different from other companies, right? So for example, if I'm a widget company, right, I'm focused on what's the price of my widgets that I'm charging, how many of them am I selling? That gives me my top line revenue. I've got my operating costs, and from there, I've got my earnings, my profit, right? Utility business is a little different because first, my profit is established, right? And from then, I have my operating expenses that it costs me to just kind of operate the system. And those two combined generate the revenue that I require to earn the profit that I have. And that revenue is then allocated across all the customers' rates. That's how the rates are essentially determined. It starts bottom up. What are my earnings as determined by the regulators? My operating expenses are just passed on through customers to get to the revenue number that needs to be targeted. And again, that's pretty different from a typical company. A typical company, I might think about increasing my earnings. I might think about raising my prices, right? I might find ways to sell more widgets. Well, for a utility, I can't unilaterally change any of those two things, right? The regulators set my rates, so that's not a lever for me. A typical company might say, well, I'm going to slash my operating expenses. Well, we care a lot about operating efficiently, right? But if you look at this equation, if we slash our operating expenses, it doesn't change our target earnings. All that does is it reduces the amount of revenue that we need to collect from customers. So it's a good thing for customers. That's why we're focused on it. But that's not, as an investor, how I describe to our investors how we're going to earn more profit for them. The only thing that you can really focus on is growing your rate base, right? So again, growing the amount of investment that you're making in the system that's serving customers, right? And managing your regulatory relationships so that you find alignment with your regulators on what a fair rate of return is for the service that you're offering. We cannot improve our investment without improving the assets. That's the rate base. And we don't have opportunities to improve our assets, to invest in the rate base, unless the community we're serving is growing, unless it's thriving, right? And that way, our mission is, I think, pretty directly aligned with missions that you'd see at several nonprofits locally, right? We're all looking for a thriving community that's growing, that's creating opportunities for us to make more investments in it, because that's how our investment grows, right? And very importantly, the utility business is local, right? We are regulated typically at state level, and regulators typically make up a region of a state. And whether those regulators are elected or appointed, that local focus is still there. It really matters with whom you're doing your business, who's leading your organization. So there's a very heavy focus on utilities with hiring locally, leading it locally, managing it locally. In short, we want to make sure that the constituency of our regulators, the constituency of the customers we're serving, are both represented outside and within our business, right? So in that way, we also want to support a thriving community that's producing leaders that we can depend upon going forward to grow our business. So next couple slides here, I want to dig in more into some of this alignment by describing how we go about growing rate base and managing a regulatory relationship responsibly. And we rely on a few key tenets when we think about how we're going to make good investments here. First, Safety. We have something we say very commonly in our organization. We've never seen a good business that has a poor safety record, right? We understand that it is our strictest obligation to create an environment for our employees where they can count on being able to go home to their families, right? Where they can have a safe operating space. We believe that our customers and our regulators have the same expectations. So for that reason, we're very dialed in and focused on safe operating practices, right? If you can't get that right, that's table stakes. You're not going to have an opportunity to grow rate base, to grow your earnings at all for your investors. So safety is always the first part of that conversation. And safety also extends to the community that we're serving, right? And both geographically and physically, right? So we also consider as a component of this tenet, how are we being environmentally responsible? I mentioned the NWI project, for example, right? I think that's a brilliant example of where we're finding an environmental challenge the community is having, and we are utilizing our utility to build an investment that responds to that environmental challenge. So not only are we creating a more environmentally responsible area for our community, but we're also finding an investment that's growing rate base alongside that, right? So safety, how you're dealing with the environment that you're operating within is really key to finding opportunities to grow rate base and maintain positive community relationships. And lastly, just the timely repair of aging infrastructure. If your assets are well taken care of, you're going to have better safety outcomes. And again, rate base as the kind of cumulative amount of investment we're making in those assets, it grows when you're doing the positive work of making a safer environment by replacing that infrastructure. So safety is clearly a key tenet there. Reliability. I try to imagine myself sometimes as a regulator, and I feel like the thing that would most get to me is anytime there's a disruption in service, my phone blowing up over and over and over again, right? So as part of managing our relationship with the community, with our regulators, try to limit those disruptions as much as possible and have the KPIs that can track how we're performing to those goals. And also being in a position, making the proper investments in management and organization so that we can have very quick restoration efforts for when there is an unavoidable disruption in service. And you can't just be reactive. It's also important to be proactive, right? So what can you do about building asset management plans that have a clear resilience focus to it so that you're better insulated from those types of events? And that means doing things like hardening the assets that provide the service, right? Replacing poles, undergrounding lines, everything you can do to try to make a community more resilient. And lastly, affordability is a key tenet for improving our community relationships and preserving our ability to grow our business. These services we're offering, they're essential. They can't be unaffordable. Everyone needs them. They can't be unaffordable. So we've got a responsibility to do everything we can to make sure that's the case. First and foremost, as we're making investments in rate base, we've got to make sure they're prudent, right? So we're not gold plating things just to grow earnings. We're doing what needs to be done. That's a part of our core commitment for safety and reliability, right? And we also want to make sure that we're operating as efficiently as possible. I already described how in our business model, decreasing our operating costs doesn't go directly towards growing the earnings of a business, but it does reduce the amount of rates that we need to collect, right? So operating efficiently is a key part of how you manage affordability for your customers, because that gets passed on directly to them, any of those savings that you can find. And any assistance programs or charitable giving that can help out the more vulnerable customers within our community, it's our job to do the best we can to support a local economy where folks are finding themselves in less and less financial hardship, right? You can't preserve your ability to grow if folks are having trouble affording the services that you're offering today, right? So affordability is another very key tenet. And what I want you to kind of get from this and this kind of long build up to how do we connect this to nonprofit sector and philanthropy is, we make our money by growing rate base and managing our relationship. And we do that by focusing on safety, reliability, and affordability. That's where our profit comes from. That's how our profit incentive, that's where our profit incentive guides us towards. And, to just bring it back to today's focus, I think there are a lot of nonprofits and community organizations where that message, that focus on having a safe, reliable, affordable community, where that would resonate. And I think that's an alignment that we need to be having more conversations about, and we need to be understanding better so that we can maximize outcomes for everyone around it. So I'm going to ask us to just kind of pause for a moment and just have a quick brainstorm, right? So laying out the why of the alignment, I'd like to ask the audience a bit, where do you think, what kind of nonprofit missions or goals do you think would best align with the utilities goals? Yeah, absolutely. Everyday life, right? We're providing a service that you touch, you feel, you depend on every day. The goals and missions of nonprofits are to make life easier for folks. So there's a lot to focus in on there with that alignment. I guess maybe to make the question even more tangible, like what is something that we focus on every day, right? I mean, I wake up and I think about, okay, what do my kids need, I guess, for class, right? How much is this going to cost? What's going to show up from Amazon today, right? So finances, I think, is an everyday thing, right? Any other thoughts? Great. I think we can just jump right into it then. So when I sat down and thought about, okay, what missions that are commonly sought after by nonprofits best align with utilities, I kind of came into 4 categories I want to talk about today. Financial assistance, not just for Amazon packages, but like I said, for essential services. I think that goes directly towards the affordability question, right? So if we're looking to make a more affordable service or impact to our community, we want to see if we can align ourselves with nonprofits who have a mission towards providing financial assistance. Workforce development. Told you our business is highly local. We expect that our business is managed and operated locally as well. So for that reason, we have a high dependency on a local workforce that has the skills and capabilities that we need. So if you work in a nonprofit that's all about building workforce opportunities locally, you'll find alignment there. Environmental/community resilience. Again, this goes directly to the safety and reliability focuses for utilities. That's how we grow, by focusing on those 2 things. If those are goals of yours and your nonprofit, you'll find alignment there. And lastly, I just got as a catch-all here, other business objectives. There might be things that we're focused on as a utility business that may not have a strict alignment or adherence to what you're doing at your nonprofit, but you might find something that you have to offer to that utility that advances something that they're focused on internally. And just that connection alone can create an opportunity for you to gather some resources from your local utility. And it's important to know what they're doing and how to speak to it so you can make your pitch to them even more appealing. So I'll step through each one of these. Financial assistance. What do I mean by this? I'm talking about supporting people who are having some unexpected financial emergencies and providing them assistance to avoid any kind of utility bill burden or avoiding any shut off in the service, right? So how do we think about where or when this type of assistance needs to be deployed? Well, we focus a lot on some very specific guidelines that the U.S. government puts out there, right? So For example, the Department of Energy specifies that a household that's spending more than 6% of its gross household income on its utility bills is experiencing an energy burden, right? The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has their own kind of thresholds, right? If a household's spending more than 3 and 4.5% on water and wastewater respectively, that's creating a high water burden. These are all metrics that we try to make sure that we're aware of, so we understand, what's the community, what are the demographics that we're serving here, right? Do we have a lot of households experiencing burden? These are things that you need to understand about the community that you're doing work in as a nonprofit, so you understand what kind of focus, what level of focus is a utility under to have this level of financial assistance available to its customers, right? Because, if our service is unaffordable, which we already determined is unacceptable as an investor, utilities need to manage their growth plans on rate base based on how much headroom there is in rates. Because if it's unaffordable, you can't grow more. So we need to be doing everything we can to try to mitigate the amount of burden of the households in our communities. Workforce development. The thing about this is developing future generations of leadership in our company, and having widespread workforce preparedness in the community that we're operating in, right? So this is important, again, as I noted, because of the desire for a representative workforce in the community, in the utility, right? We need to look like the community we're serving. We need to have folks who understand and feel connection to the communities that we're serving. And for that reason, we need to hire locally. Now, this can be a big challenge sometimes because utilities aren't always located in the biggest, largest job markets, right? Think about, the small town that comes to mind of you anywhere in the Southeast with a declining population. Even that town has wires and poles and pipes that are providing water and electricity, right? There are utilities there. And because it's important for us to hire locally, we need to do everything we can to make sure that there's a workforce that's available that has all the skills we need: craft labor, construction, welding, data analytics, customer service. I mentioned before in our building of Delta Utilities, we added 200 jobs in Louisiana. That's because we needed to build a business, and we decided to build it locally to have a lot of these competencies available for us. So in a nutshell, before I go to that, even if it's not to develop a workforce to work at the utility, having a community where people see opportunities to stay and work locally, that's creating another customer, right? So it directly goes to our bottom line as well. So if you have a nonprofit that's all about making sure that someone graduating from school, leaving their parents' house, is just going down the road and having an apartment or house for themselves, creating another customer. If you have a nonprofit that's preparing that person to maybe take a job that we need to fill within our utility, that's very direct, clear alignment. Because the last thing we want, I think, as most local nonprofits, and especially as a utility, is for that person to graduate and go off to the city down the road or the state over there, right? So that kind of workforce development, that local focus is something you can definitely find alignment on, seek engagement with your local utility on as a nonprofit. Environmental community resilience. I promised I would get to it, right? I've given the example a few different times, and it's kind of top of mind in this first example I gave here. This is about building an eco-friendly, sustainable community that's resilient to natural disasters, right? So in a changing climate, we're finding a more frequent occurrence of storms. The impact of the storms is getting worse and worse, right? We need to be doing everything we can, as I mentioned, in a safe and reliable utility to grow our earnings by being safe and reliable. We need to do everything we can to try to make our communities more resilient from a changing environment. So some examples here. Urban forestry, making more green spaces. Like, that's not something that just makes the community more beautiful to look at, right? It makes it more attractive for people to stay in town or to attract new customers and new businesses. But it also helps us in our business. For example, there's in places all across the Southeast, especially a big problem with stormwater infiltrating the collection systems of wastewater utilities. What does that do? That adds the volume to the volumes that we're collecting. It adds to the volumes we're treating in our wastewater plants, adds to the number of chemicals we need to use in treating that excess volume, maybe adds to the amount of storage that we need at those wastewater treatment facilities. That's all extra investment, extra dollars, extra operating expenses. You know, if we could do something where we are mitigating the amount of stormwater infiltration by just adding more roots in the ground, adding more green spaces, that actually saves money, right? So if you just kind of can talk to your local utility about what you're doing that's maybe planting trees and you don't see the dollar for dollar connect or the direct connection to how they operate their business, there's some secondary, tertiary things they are concerned about that you just need to be prepared to communicate with them. You know, it also helps to, mitigate the impacts of floods, having more green spaces, right? Makes our restoration job easier. Community lighthouses. So these are basically, setups in communities. Local plants could be a church, hospital, retirement community, but they're set up with solar power and energy storage so that they can be a place where people go to during a natural disaster event. You should be able to engage your local utility on finding some support for those organizations, because what do they care about? They care about, after a storm event, for people to feel safe and ready to return home, right? So that they can continue being customers, continue utilizing the services that you're providing. The easier we can make it for people to, be resilient through those types of events, by being at places like a community lighthouse, the easier we can make it for people to return to it. There was, post-Katrina, a lot of what the utility was challenged with at that point wasn't necessarily the restoration effort. It was the fact that a lot of their customers had made a separate life in Houston, or further west or further east. Losing those customers, losing that connection to the community, you want to do everything you can to make a community more resilient so that, you still have customers to serve after the restoration efforts are complete. And energy efficiency programs, this is something that probably isn't exactly intuitive, right? So if you're in the business of selling electricity, what incentive do you have in reducing the amount of electric need within households? Well, just get to that answer right away. I mean, it's in support of something the regulators want you to do, that states have standards for you to do. So it's not really discretionary for you to participate in those programs, right? And putting a silver lining on that, to where you definitely do see it as good for your business, though, is it reduces the amount of peak demand you might have at any given time. That really puts a lot of pressure on the grid that you maintain. So it's actually a good thing to be doing on a regular basis, just to manage how you're going to be able to, respond and maintain your grid on a regular basis. So those are programs, again, if you're doing the work in the community, trying to help folks have access to more affordable, more independent energy systems, to use less energy, to replace windows on older homes with more efficient windows. That's all stuff that could be a part of a utility's energy efficiency program that they're already looking to expend dollars to support. So lastly, other business objectives, pretty simply just advancing any business objectives through community partnerships. I think, some easy examples of this are just brand exposure, enhancement. If I've got a product I'm trying to launch, if I'm trying to get folks to sign on to a new automated billing system, if I'm trying to help folks connect from their provider Entergy to Delta Utilities, right? That's a really big business objective that we're focused on a lot right now. Anything that you have to offer as a nonprofit that can give us access to the folks with whom we're trying to connect across any of those business objectives, that's something you can find engagement and alignment with on your utility, right? So think about what you have to offer. Do you have a physical location? Do you have proximity to our customers in a way that we can't easily replicate? Especially proximity to certain disadvantaged customers, right? If you, for example, some of our folks at Delta Utilities have been working and engaging and meeting at a local retirement community, right? They're finding ways to support there because they're seeing the win-win in supporting that retirement community with opportunity to spend time with those folks and help walk them through what could be a pretty, maybe simple for someone in Generation Z, but a pretty technical online process of connecting to automated billing, right? So if you have a community event or a festival that we could be a sponsor to, it's a good thing for the utility for folks to become aware and see their logo that's not just in your mailbox in a bill that's telling you you need to pay them within 30 days, right? So all that's part of the business objective, the positive marketing, that even if there's not clear alignment across environmental sustainability or financial assistance or workforce development, it's still something you can find engagement on. So I already went probably in a bit of detail there on the types of things where the alignment exists and where it's strongest, but just to give a couple of real examples here, right, on some things that I think really hit all four or a number of these different sectors, right? Landscape beautification, urban forestry, really great stuff that the NOLA Tree Project's doing, the Arbor Day Foundation's doing. They're finding opportunities to get resources from their local utilities. And it's really a win-win across the board for those utilities, right? Because what are they doing? They're, as I discussed, they're lowering costs, right? If they're a water utility by eliminating some of the infiltration systems, right? They are making it more affordable, right? If they're helping to put off some of the damage the flood might create, right? That's investment we don't have to make that keeps downward pressure on our rates going forward. Workforce development. This is an opportunity where you're getting volunteers, you're engaging young people, you're beautifying community, makes it more attractive for them to stay there. Like that's a win-win because they're future customers, future employees, future leaders. Environmental, very clear, helping build resilience against floods when you plant more roots in the ground, right? And other business opportunities, right? Making it more beautiful, making it a place people want to live, makes it easier for us to attract customers. When customers come in, we need to extend infrastructure to them. We spend money to extend that infrastructure. That goes into our rate base, our earnings grow. Win, 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 win. One other example, right? I mentioned I serve on the board of Junior Achievement Greater Baton Rouge, and one thing I was really excited to do was to connect them to opportunities with Delta Utilities, and is easy sell for me because, again, hits a lot of alignment points that Delta's focused on, right? They've got this really cool initiative, BizTown, right? It basically combines in-class learning with an all-day immersive experience in this kind of simulated town setting. So you're spending the day as a student, you're playing the role of a citizen, a worker, and you've got your own budget, and you're navigating this whole kind of physical location where there's the bank there, there's a utility, you're dealing with how to manage your bills. It's just a really great immersive learning experience for how to operate in the free enterprise system for young people, right? This is great for us at Delta Utilities because, again, it's engaging young people on financial management, right? Having customers, future customers, they understand how to manage their finances, helps us in our affordability concerns, right? Workforce development, we've got a nice big stand there, Delta Utilities logo. We're exposing people to opportunities, career opportunities within Delta Utilities, right? So it's a great, and because we've got all that signage, right, it's also a great brand exposure opportunity for us. We're here connecting with a nonprofit that's got a great reputation across Baton Rouge, across New Orleans, really nationally. And by lending them the financial support and getting that sponsorship, we're creating an opportunity for folks to see us, see our logo, see our employees volunteering at the event, and not, again, just having that logo show up on a bill that's due at the end of the month. So win, win, win. Sure, if I thought hard, I could have stretched on an environmental thing, but I think 3 out of 4 is not so bad. All right, so now I'll pause here. Right? That was kind of why the resources are there, why the alignment exists. That was, what they're ideally set aside for. Before I jump into like the how, like where can you get these resources? Does anyone have any other questions on those first 2 questions? I hope they were answered by now. If not, we can. I think we got some time to spend on it. No? Great. Okay. Everyone wants to get to how's the money become available, I guess, huh? Okay. So it's important for us to understand how utilities want to be deploying these resources, right? And there are a few different ways. Probably most intuitively, most directly, bill relief and energy assistance, right? So direct financial support for utility bills. Utilities especially want this targeted towards the folks who need the money, right? We're not just setting aside funds and creating a rate credit for everyone. We really want to target this to the folks who are really pressing against the edges of that energy burden, that water burden that we're talking about, right? That's the biggest bang for your buck. A couple examples on the screen here. Entergy's Power to Care, I know, is something that our folks at Delta Utilities have been paying a lot of attention to and seeing how they could replicate in our own way. But this is a vehicle that's set aside for really elderly and disabled Entergy customers. Heat New Mexico, Heat NM. This is a program that we spent a lot of time looking at, making sure we understood in our investment, our pending investment in New Mexico Gas Company, right? So this is similarly a heating assistance fund to help folks with winter heating bills. Not such a big concern here, but New Mexico, a lot of that has like the same elevation of like Colorado, so it gets cold. And we want to make sure that we're not creating a burden for folks who really, really need that heating assistance during the winters there. Both of these programs are funded by voluntary donations from employees or for customers, but they're matching funds, right? So Entergy matches their program dollar for dollar. Heat NM is funded $1.50 for dollar. So you're getting these matching funds from the utilities is going towards heating assistance. And I think the other thing to really pay attention to on this slide is who's administering these programs. In both instances, it's a local nonprofit, right? Salvation Army is represented across both of these as well. So, what do they have to be in a place to administer this? Well, they've got physical locations. They have places where folks who might be representative of this vulnerable community we're trying to touch, where they have a lot of proximity to them. So if you have a nonprofit, if you've got a physical plant, if you have ability to offer proximity to the folks who we want to have access to these programs, that's something you need to consider as you reach out to the utility and try to put yourself in a position, especially with Delta as we're trying to put this program together, put yourself in a position to where you can participate in this and have that clear alignment where you can kind of grow the services you're offering along with the utility. Something I'm sure most everyone in this room is familiar with, right? Utilities have their own kind of associated foundations as well. So this is your kind of typical tax exempt structure where they'll offer grants from it, grants of various sizes, small and large in many cases. What's important to understand about this is not something that's part of the operating expenses that are just going back and recovering through rates, right? These are typically funded through the earnings of the utility itself. So definitely look out and understand from your local utility as you're looking out from resources that it may not be the actual kind of corporate entity you're looking to, even though I'm sure the representation will be within that corporate entity if we need to be speaking with. But understand that it's actually a separate, 501c3 or a separate tax exempt foundation that they might have set aside interested in doing the work that you're looking to seek resources from. Right. Corporate sponsorships. Don't want to just see us with the bill in the mail. That's what this one's all about. This is a little different from foundations, right? Typically, the funds set aside for corporate sponsorships are actually part of the utility. They're part of the marketing budget that the utility has, right? In some circumstances, it may be part of the operating expenses that we're recovering in rates. But this is all about sponsoring community events, advancing marketing efforts, really trying to improve community relations, right? So you'll be able to find opportunities to reach out to utilities for sponsorship opportunities, right? If they've got a business objective they want met, you're looking for dollars, be able to speak to them about how you can make their brand more visible in a positive way by participating, or by partnering with them. And the last thing I'll mention, and I think this one's, too often gets underappreciated, volunteering. Not all resources utility has to offer you are dollars, right? Again, as we've talked about over and over again, there's a very strong local employee base here, right? Delta Utilities employs 800 people in the communities that we're serving. You can, maybe you're not getting the right kind of amount of dollar support that you're hoping from a utility, but if you need volunteers to man a booth, that's something that they can offer, and they actually have programmatic ways of offering volunteering opportunities to the employee base. So that goes from paid time off for volunteering hours, right? Understand if your local utility has a program where that's something they can offer. Matching grants for volunteer hours. If you have a person who works within your nonprofit who has a job at the utility, that you really press them to see if, hey, can you make the most? Can you talk to someone in your organization who can match your efforts here? You're doing a lot of work for us to see if your corporate employer wants to get behind it as well. There might be a program in place for that. If not, there might be an opportunity to create it that can benefit you. A utility can provide incentives, right? They can make transportation easier for their volunteer force. They can offer branded gear. They can offer food, right? Any and everything that you need for your event, your organization, your mission. You don't have to just ask for dollars. Ask for people. Ask for hours. Food. Please ask for food. A lot of good chefs at these utilities. I've known it from experience now. That was a fun part of diligence for us. Recognition and rewards, right? Try to work with your utility partner to make sure that they're also on the back end, after making all that available, help their employees feel good about it. You help them realize how appreciative you are of it, right? Because if you can get in a cycle, an annual cycle, you've got an annual event, and you were able to rely on this utility base once, volunteer base once, and they feel good about it afterwards, they're a company that's going to be there year after year after year. With the organizations I work with, sometimes it's just not a good year for some of our corporate sponsors to be providing the same level of gift that they've done before. And that could have a lot of things to do with the economy at the time, from things that might be happening in the federal government, right? Like that's pretty timely today. But your utility is local, it's regulated by the state. Their earnings are set, right? They're a much more stable cash flow generator, a much more stable kind of profit entity. They can be more reliable than a lot of other types of businesses. That's why we like it as investors, but it's why you should like it as having them as core reliable partners for your events and your nonprofit going forward as well. Okay. Just to put a pin in it, this is all voluntary, all these vehicles. It's not something they have to do, but it's something they're all doing. And it's something you can hopefully encourage them to add if they're not already adding it. With maybe the case-by-case exception I made on corporate sponsorships, these are all not recoverable in rates. So these are things they're doing, taking from their earnings, which should be the first and key signal to you that it's good for business if they're taking from earnings to help participate in this way, because they're seeing that growth in their business come back elsewhere in their ability to grow rate base down the line, or to have a positive relationship with their regulators so that they're able to protect that fair rate of return that they're getting, right? They're not just getting this back through rates. They're seeing this as a good investment of their earnings going forward. And these are all things that are aligned with their core business objectives as well, right? Bill relief energy assistance helps on finances. Foundation grants, that can go to a number of things, including environmental resilience, right? There's a lot of ways these vehicles can go directly towards advancing the things that they care about, and hopefully you care about as a leader in your nonprofit organizations. So I'm going to wrap, but before I do, I just want to impress upon you the urgency of this message, of this connection, right? It's a pretty unprecedented time, especially in the electric utility industry right now. The advancement of AI is necessitating the need to build these large data centers. And if you're an electric utility and a new data center is being built in your town by one of these really large developers, that's like the equivalent of adding a whole new town to your service territory. We've not seen like this level of growth in the utility business since the advent of the light bulb, right? That might be a little hyperbolic, but not by much, not by as much as you think. What that means is there's a lot of spending that utilities are doing right now. I've got across the board here a number of utilities across the nation, right? They've all significantly increased their capital investment plans to try to meet this growing need from data centers. What is that going to do? That means rate-based growth, right? Investors love it. But the management teams know that they need to protect this growth that they're seeing that's almost unprecedented in their industry by having good relationships with their regulators and by making sure that their customers can afford what's about to come down the pike for them, right? So there's almost been no other time where they should be more dialed in, more focused on how they're making good, positive impacts in the communities that they're serving. They should be more open now than ever to understanding what you have to offer them by way of exposure, positive exposure, by way of affordability assistance, by way of workforce development. A lot of bodies need to go to doing this work, right? Now's the time. Now's the time, and it's why I'm really appreciative of the invitation today to make sure that I can spread the message here locally, at least, that there are a lot of opportunities for you to engage with utilities right now. Look, we understand the value in this, right? As investors, I got some quotes up here from at least one name you should know with Warren Buffett, right? Like, utilities are largely recession resistant, right? Because we're regulated. The downside of that is we can't charge whatever we want. The upside is our earnings are largely protected by the regulatory compact, right? So they're reliable partners. We like that as investors, but you should like it because we're reliable partners for your organizations going forward. And the opportunity we're seeing right now in growing rate base, I mean, it is robust, right? So I'm very happy to be in the position I'm in right now. I'm even happier if I can help to connect our businesses towards the real value drivers, which are the folks who are doing the work to grow the communities in which we're operating. That's the nonprofit leaders, the community organizations. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate the invitation. I hope this was helpful.
Thank you so much, Julius. Before we do our final presentation, is there anyone in the audience with a question that you may have written down or something different that may not have been mentioned today, not knowing what the content would be? You know, the Valdry Center is here to educate the community. The community in more ways than just bringing academic persons here to talk about fundraising. Here today, Julius came with sharing with us various investment opportunities that brings us in a different light. Students here on this campus in our engineering and science department, business departments, etc., can reap the benefits of what this company provides in the community, the leadership that they provide. He mentioned a couple of companies that they recently merged with. Centerpoint up in the Bossier-Shreveport area provides financial support to the students on that campus. That's important to know. Also, Entergy, which is a name that we know, provides financial support, growth, not only to the students, but to the faculty members, to building the labs, et cetera. So there's a lot of opportunities that were shared here today that is different than what we've been hearing about fundraising. So this is an investment opportunity that many of us may think about talking with our portfolio managers to add a little utility company within our financial portfolio, because we see it gives back to the community. The nonprofits that are here today, thank you for being here. I do see a couple of faces. And so today we're sharing with you that these energy companies, these utility companies are here to accept grant applications so that the consumers you serve can get resources to help them reduce their burden. I know many of you took some notes, but we have a question here.
Yeah, I have a question. As you see the engagement of new data centers and these big, robust industries, right? This revolutionary that thing that's coming around. How is that right impacting communities for rates, usage, and then also how is the industry right seeing this as being good stewards back to the community, providing the community back with those resources that they need, right? With reduces the rates, maybe usage, right? Is there any payoff? And then as an investor, how do you see that? How do you see that display in a future forecast, right? If you could.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, so the advent of data centers is challenging in a couple of ways, right? There's just like the overall size of the investment opportunity and need, right? Which in and of itself is a challenge that you have to meet. It's also where these are located, right? So in some instances, they're looking for a lot of space. That space may not be near a conventional load center like a city. And because of that, a lot of new transmission needs to get built out. Electrons are flowing in a different direction than maybe the grid was set up for them to be flowing from, right? So there's a lot of investment that goes in with that, and there is a lot of discussion, a lot of debate that's going on who pays for all that, right? I think there are certain examples of where you're seeing some of the data center owners stepping in and taking on more of that burden. There's potentially opportunity for utilities to put more of that investment in a different level or different type of rate tariff, separate from residential, commercial, into something more industrial or even more specific towards data centers, right? Something that may get closer and closer, just having a direct one-to-one connection with that data center load growth so that they're more so paying for the infrastructure that they're relying on that's not really going towards other customers. So it's a great question. I think it's being sorted out a number of different ways across different jurisdictions with different parties right now. But it's really a question about equity, right? And that's something that we understand. And again, it goes directly towards how we consider our ability to grow our business, beyond data centers, but across our entire customer base. Are we making investments that are creating affordability burdens? Or are we making investments that are providing better services? And how are we dealing with that, if not more directly in the question of who's paying for it? So that's something we're going to be talking about for at least a decade right now. And I hope to look to positive examples of where they figured it out well.
Marlon Hollins, Director of Advancement for the College of Nursing and Allied Health. So I have two-part question. The first one, I saw opportunity for utility assistance for communities at large, but I know for many of our students, they run into financial burdens with basic needs, housing, groceries, utilities being one. So is there any conversation around some structured utility subsidies around students who are in student housing or apartment complex? So that's one. And then the other one, I saw a number of community-based jobs and industries that could have influence in, but I didn't see anything specifically mentioned around healthcare, but understanding occupational health and the needs of welders, pipe fitters, and of the likes. Are there any conversations around embedding healthcare at the forefront to make sure we have some preventative access?
Yeah, I'll kind of answer both questions with the same kind of general response, right? What I wanted to get across in the presentation today is that your utility is a really potentially large local resource, right? And you get more from them the closer you are towards helping their investors out, right? Just to be frank about it. And you really help their investors out when you're helping to make life more affordable for their customers, right? So that's a broad generalization, right? So the folks in healthcare, students especially, anyone who has a lower income or has unexpected financial challenges, right? All that, there's alignment. There's even greater alignment if you can, as your organization, represent yourself as being more tied to one of the existing programs that are there to help folks, right? There's like I said, something like Heat and M, for example, right? You're an organization that can offer a physical location that can help administer an already existing program that gets closer to the actual profit incentive, right? Just the closer and closer you can move towards things that are already existing, that already clearly have dollars set aside for it, the more helpful it can be. Happy to kind of share some more information offline here, though, just to see if there's some more specific programmatic things we could think about together. Okay.
Thank you. We have checked our virtual space, and I don't see any new questions for you, Mr. Bedford. But I want to first thank the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation for the grant that we received to support these seminars that we have been bringing to the community for the past 3 years. And now we want to thank you and Bernhard Capital for allowing you the space to volunteer to come here and present a different subject to our community in person. Thank you all for being here today. I greatly appreciate seeing faces here, as well as all of you all who are viewing us online, YouTube and Facebook. Share it. It's repeatable if anyone you know has not seen it. But we have a gift for you. So I'm not sure if you saw the photo, well, not photo, the mural on the wall of the bluff of the river.
Not yet. No.
Not yet.
Yeah.
So when you leave this room, you'll see on the right a mural.
Okay.
It is a picture of the bluff. And in this tube, we have one for you as well.
Thank you so much.
Here is a small gesture as well for you to wear.
Thank you.
And we thank Julius Bedford for being here today and Bernhard Capital Partners here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Thank you all for being here for our event today. The next event will be March 11th, and we'll talk about picking your first round draft pick. So those of you who are listening today and are sole proprietor, you want to attend that one because it's going to help you determine how to pick that first person that's going to be a part of your team. And I know everybody's going to look forward to that message as well. Thank you all for being here today at the Vaudrey Center for Philanthropy on the campus of Southern University here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Terry.
Yes. Turn this off.
All right.
That's yours.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So now we have the original in the back.
Okay.